Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We are on episode 19, which is pretty crazy to think
Wow.
about. We've almost
Yeah.
hit 20,
Yeah.
episode 20
Over a
would be
year and a half.
crazy. It's been over a year and a half. So thank you guys for watching and supporting us and asking questions. But we're going to do something a little bit different that I really wanted to do and I was really excited to do because I like hearing you talk. And that is Larry Miller's testimony, which a lot of people watching, maybe you've heard before, but I know there's quite a select few that have not heard your testimony, how
Okay.
you became saved and where you came from and everything like that. And before we get started, we're just going to drop a bombshell right now.
Yeah.
Larry's name
It's not really my
is
name.
not
Bum,
actually the
bum,
guy. Everyone, you guys
bum.
have been calling him Larry for I don't know
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
long.
Y'all calling me
If
Larry.
you guys didn't know, I am a junior. So
Yes.
right off the bat, he's
So,
just been lying to you for
Junior.
100 years. So
Yeah.
his real name is Mack, just like my name is
Which is
Mack.
so much cooler
The
than
more you
Larry.
know, and
I
it's
gotta
just
tell
way
you.
cooler than Larry.
Yeah.
So maybe during your retired years, we're just gonna switch your name. It's just gonna be Mack.
Such a boring
Everybody's
name.
just gonna call you Mack from
Larry.
now on.
Larry.
So before we get into it, one of the questions I wanted to ask you, and we'll lead into the testimony, is
Okay.
what was your life like before you got saved? Because there's a lot of people that just assumed that don't know you very well. They just assumed, oh yeah. Like Larry went to high school and he was a good Christian man, and then he ended up being a pastor, and that's it. That's
the rest of the
you know what I
story.
mean? He's just a lucky man. That's you were just whatever.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit when you were growing up, what your life was like before we dive into the whole testimony.
And obviously that goes way back because I'm
We're going
68. But I lived in a house with. Well, first I want to say, it is really interesting to talk about something like this because so many times all of us are able to, or at least look at people and judge them from the outside.
Yeah.
You look at them and what is it? What's the quote? Is that you can't judge a book by its cover.
Yes.
And even more so, there was a series that Jason Sudeikis was in. What was it called? The soccer series. Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
And he quoted Walt Whitman in one of the greatest scenes in a movie, I believe, and he was throwing darts. But the quote was, he quoted Walt Whitman in saying, be curious, not judgmental. And, that's just so good because it's easy for us to look at people. And for maybe some of you that, don't know me or maybe had a idea of what you thought I was. But I actually grew up in a home, and not to make it super lengthy, I have two other brothers, two other sisters, and of course a mother. But I grew up never knowing my biological father. So, and to this day, I still don't know. I mean,
we do not know.
His name, I believe, was Johnny St. John.
Johnny St. John.
Yeah, which is kind of a cool name. So my name could literally
technically
be
we should
Mack
be
St. John.
Mack St. John.
Larry St. John. But Johnny St. John. Never met him, don't really know a whole lot about him. So I grew up in a family where I had a stepfather, or now we call them bonus fathers, or, whatever. But I grew up with a stepfather. And of course, I had the other brothers and sisters. And we grew up in a home that it was... my stepfather was an alcoholic, and he was an abusive alcoholic. Very smart man, but an abusive, somewhat alcoholic. He would get drunk, and there were fights, and there was always controversy. And so I grew up in a home to where you never knew what was going to go on, especially if my stepdad, got drunk.
Always been drinking.
And of course, my other brothers and sisters had to live the same life. And what's interesting, we lived in a 900 square foot home with like 7 of us that lived in that house.
Because you didn't have a room.
I didn't even have a room. I slept on the couch a lot of the time.
That's the room right there.
And we shared rooms, but I slept on the couch, and so it was challenging to say the least. My mom, I believe, dropped out of school in 9th grade. Stepfather was a very smart man, though. He had patents, very intelligent. He was an engineer, an electric engineer. And fast forward till, I was about 19 years old, I believe. And my father had been going through a lot of issue, my stepdad, and he ended up actually taking his own life in our home. And so, you go through life, trying to figure out, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't
You
have the
never
same
had
last
that
name.
reassurance
Yeah.
either of,
Yeah,
oh,
I didn't
that's
have
my
the
dad.
same name. My mom was Penn. That was, my stepfather's last name was Penn.
Yeah.
Mine was Miller. So growing up, you always kind of have that. It's kind of odd,
Yeah.
weird. And so your identity, you're just trying to find out who you are in your identity.
Mm-hmm.
And it was hard when
Yeah.
you're 18 years old, 19 years old. And then, you turn around, you don't really know who your biological father is. And no matter what anyone says, it still affects you no matter what.
Yeah. You can say, oh, no, I don't care.
I mean,
You know what
I'm
like,
68.
well,
and
everybody.
I'm not all, hey, everybody feels sorry for me. That's
Right.
not it.
Right.
But it still affects you. It's weird not to know who your biological father is.
Mm-hmm.
So that was weird
That
growing
weighs
up.
on you.
So yeah, I didn't grow up in a home that everything.
You weren't a Christian.
Like where we went to church.
Yeah. So Larry Miller was not a
everything
Christian
was hunky dory.
And now, and you drank.
Oh yeah, and because of that, I think because of a lot of growing up under that scenario, and I guess I would also say this now that I'm older. What I do understand, and I know my brothers and sisters understand this also, is that for a long time I somewhat hated my stepfather for what happened and what was going on, and tried to really separate myself from that. But now that I'm older and I understand that he was in pain. And he didn't know what to do with the pain, and that's how
all he knew how. That's how he knew. He coped with that.
That was his coping skill, was alcohol. So I've transitioned from maybe really disliking him greatly to really feeling sorry and understanding he was in pain. And now I wish I knew then what I know now, and maybe I could have helped. So, and because of that, so I ran the streets and, did the whole gamut of drinking and smoking and chasing girls and just doing stuff, staying up all night and not caring about anyone else, including myself. It was kind of like you really just don't care. Like, hey, if I die tomorrow, it's okay.
It's whatever.
I'm just going to drink and be happy and party, dude.
Yeah. Larry Miller.
Because life sucks.
Smoking the devil's lettuce.
Yes, that's it. Just, hey, get all you can.
Yeah.
Because life's hard and it sucks.
And this was going on until about what age? Do you remember?
Probably until I was about 21. And, that's when something different happened in my life. I mean, go ahead.
The story I like hearing too is that, who was it? Whoever's friend's mom.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Tell that.
Yeah. That's a crazy story.
It's a good story just to know where you're coming from and where you're at right now. And how important, there might be people that go, maybe I'm that person, that could be what you heard.
Wherever you're at. I get it. I mean, I understand, and I still remember I'd go to my friend's house. His name was Neil. And I would go over, and of course we were going to go out drinking.
Yeah, you're already planning.
We're partying.
Shenanigans.
So we're going down on High Street. We're going down to all the bars. What at that time was the Agora, the Palace, and these different places. And we had what we were going to do in mind. And I would go in and wait for him because he wouldn't be ready. And I would typically drive, and I would go in. And his mom's name, I just know her as Mrs. Ball. That was her name. His name was Neil. And I would go in, and she was an absolute Jesus freak. I mean, if there was anybody that knew God,
it's her.
And I didn't go to church, and I just knew this lady was cuckoo. She was weird.
Yeah.
Because I would go in there and sit.
You're probably thinking, please hurry.
Oh, I would go knock on the door. I'm like, Neil.
Please go.
And of course, we didn't have cell phones.
Yeah, so you'd be like, hey, make sure you're ready.
Go, dude, come out. I'll just wait in the car.
Yeah.
So I'd knock on the door. I'd go in. Next thing you know, she'd come up. She'd sit beside me. She'd hold my hands. Larry, I just want to pray for you. Can I pray for you? And of course, what are you going to say?
Sure,
Mrs. Ball, and she would pray these prayers as if like God was right there.
Yeah.
I mean, I almost,
you're like, holy
I would bow my head and kind of look up like somebody else because she would pray this prayer like heaven down.
Yeah.
And then she would tell me, Larry, I want you to know God has a plan for your life. And I believe you're going to be a preacher one day. And I'm like, I'm thinking to
Whatever.
myself,
You talking
lady,
crazy. Yeah. Like, whatever. Just get me
okay,
out of
you
here.
might know God,
Yeah.
but you don't know that.
Yeah. And you don't know me.
You've
Yeah.
missed it and you don't know me. You've missed it big time. And she would say, Larry, I believe one day you're going to be a preacher. And I'd be like, Neil, get ready. Let's get out of here.
In the car.
Your mom is
Yeah.
nuts.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So it kind of started there. I mean, it was like,
wow.
I just kind of blew it off. Like,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Like, this is weird.
That's
it's not going to
dude,
amount to anything.
I'm
That's the
going out-
last thing you're thinking
Dude,
of.
I'm going out to
Yeah,
get
you're
drunk.
right. I am going to go be a
Chasing
preacher tomorrow.
girls.
Yeah. You're
You
like,
know,
I'm
come
just
on,
trying to get
man.
drunk. Yeah.
Yeah. Preacher, whatever.
So then you do that, and that leads into where was your shift? Because then I know you met mom, and that kind of also changed things. Which, by the way, where was it? Where are we on the time frame? Where also a lot of people don't know that Larry Miller was going to be a Columbus Clipper or tried out. For
Yeah,
Columbus
you know,
Clippers.
I tried
very
out.
good
I played
baseball player. Very good baseball player.
I played baseball at Johnstown.
Yeah,
and of course, I'm not a big guy, so you know, it was in the cards. I wasn't going to make it to the pros, but I was going to try out. So I tried out for the Pirates. I tried out for the Yankees. I tried out for the Clippers. And obviously did not make that. Derek Jeter, yeah. I'm not. I look Derek, like yes. I'm a piece that fell off of Derek Jeter.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you know, I tried out, and that was, you know, sports was my.
But you were close.
But I was close.
You were close.
I mean, I made a few cuts, and then at the end, it was just I just wasn't big.
You're not big enough. Yeah.
You know, I mean, at the height I was at that time. Matter of fact, I actually got turned down. Me and my friend Neil were actually going to go in. Neil Ball. Yeah. We had enlisted into the Marines, so we were going to go in together. You didn't know this? Okay, so we both go. So you could go in on the buddy plan, and of course, you know, growing up, I'm going to be this tough guy. So you and I, let's go in and be Marines. And okay, listen, don't judge me, don't laugh. My goal was Magnum PI. I thought, dude, I'm going to be a private investigator. So what a better way to start? Listen, I'm going to be an MP, which is military police.
Yeah.
I'm going to go in the Marines. We're going to be tough. And Neil and I are going to go in together. We're both going to be military police, get out, and we're going to be Magnum PI. Why? Because you have to wear cool shirts and you have girls.
Sunglasses. Yeah.
You know, you got the women. Yeah. And so what happened there was, so we go sign up.
I had no idea.
It was our last day. We had to go back, get the paper signed. So we go to pick them up to bring them home because our parents have to sign them, right? And back then you could just take them home.
Yeah. Bring it back whenever.
Bring it back whenever. I mean, we're not 1976. You gotta remember.
Yeah.
So we go in, and the recruiter goes, "Hey, Larry, you know, we have one problem. It's not a big problem. We're going to get you both signed up, but you're going to go in boot camp together, but you're too short to be military police."
Oh my gosh.
Now that's since changed, but I'm like, wait, what? And he goes, "Yeah, you're only 5'5". They have a height requirement, but don't worry about it. We're going to get you into something else." And I'm like, whoa.
I'm out.
No, dude. I mean, I'm going to be Magnum PI.
Yeah.
Right. You know? And so we walked out and said, nope, we ain't doing it.
Yeah, that's not it.
I'm not doing it. So almost joined the Marines, dude.
Wow.
Literally,
so
almost
Neil,
joined the
and then
Marines.
he didn't do it either then.
And he did, because it was a buddy plan. Like, we're in this together.
In it or we're not, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to in boot camp. We're going to shaving our heads together.
Yeah, that's a new story that I just
heard then from there, what was your question then?
So then, because I was wondering about the timeline, and then I got sidetracked by baseball. You met mom.
Yeah.
And that also was the shift into something different in your life or whatever. Was this the same time as the Neil Ball thing, or was this was obviously years later?
Yeah, well, it was, you know, wasn't too much later. I was living in a trailer with another friend. His name was Pat. And of course we're running bars still, and I'm still hanging out with Neil. But I'll never forget, we went out, it was on a Friday night, and I came home early. We had driven separately. We had met in Columbus, drinking. It was probably 1:32 in the morning. And I was just depressed.
Yeah.
You know, because it just caught up with me. I was.
You're like, it's the same thing over
it just,
and over.
I was getting
Nothing
old.
is.
Like, what's life about? I mean, it's just, what am I doing? And it was just life. I don't know. I just thought it was hard. And I'll never forget, I went in the little bathroom because we were living in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath trailer. And at the time, it was pretty sweet.
With Pat Kesey.
Yeah, okay. Right. And he hadn't come back yet. And I come back, and I went into the bathroom, and I was pretty drunk. But I remember looking in the mirror, and saying these words. This is all I said. Wasn't a prayer. I was like, I'm so done. And I just said, I still remember saying, God, if you're real, do something. And I went to bed. Went to bed, woke up the next morning, and it was interesting because I got up.
Where you're like, I'm going to be a new man.
I think I'm going to go. I want to look in the mirror.
Different now.
Yeah. I looked in the mirror and I'm like, yeah,
nope,
same
still
guy.
same guy.
You look
same
bad.
Guy. Yeah.
And so got up, and I'll never forget it. It might have been a week or two later. I went into the dairy aisle, and I'd went in there often. It was a dairy aisle that was in Johnstown. I was working, and I would go in there for lunch. And I went in, and there was a girl working the counter. And I ordered my stuff, and she said, hey, there's a girl that works in the back, and she thinks you're cute. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, great. I don't get that a lot, but great.
Very nice.
And I thought, okay, well, what's her name? Well, her name's April Thompson. She's only 16. And at this time, I'm 20. I'm 20 years old. She's 16.
That's
I'm
crazy
like,
for you.
dude, that's almost, like you're going to jail. And so I'll never forget, I went home, didn't think too much about it, but Pat, my friend, come home, and I said, hey, do you know somebody named, I said, I've never seen her. She's from Northridge. We're from Johnstown. Those are rival schools. Yeah. How could I date her?
Yeah.
And he said, oh, dude, yeah, you don't know them? I'm like, no. Like, well, her brother's Vic Thompson. They moved to it. I said, yeah. And he's like, dude, they're like Jesus freaks. Like, her dad is like, he has a place out there called Don's Automotive. He has a big cross, on the thing where they do automotive care. And I'm like, oh, okay. So she's a Jesus freak. He's like, yeah. And he's like, you're never going to get anywhere with that. Right. I'm like, so you know what that means? I'm like, all right, whatever. And I thought, you know what? Maybe this is something I need to find out what's up. And then the rest is history. I go in, we start talking, we start dating, and then we get married. And I ended up going, her dad said, well, if you're going to date her, you need to go to church.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I still remember, thinking, this is what I need to do. God is, I asked him, I said, God, do something. And he's putting people in my life saying, hey, and I'll never forget going to church, giving my life to Christ, realizing like, this is what I need. This is the thing that I've been missing my entire life, because I didn't grow up that way. And it's interesting, maybe you're out there and you don't know God. Maybe you do. But here's the interesting thing that I found is that I felt like because I didn't grow up in it, that it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, dude, I wasn't allowed to be in the club.
Yeah, that's not my thing, and I wasn't allowed.
I mean, I don't know the Bible, dude.
Really, I'm not that guy.
They talk, because Christians can get stupid and weird. They talk Christian weird stuff, and glory to God, hallelujah, how you doing, brother? And just weird stuff, and God bless you.
You didn't grow up in this,
and I didn't grow up. Like, dude, those were all wimpy, sissy weirdos, and it's just not me, so I don't fit in. Until I realized that it had nothing to do with me fitting in, but everything to do with God loving me and forgiving me.
Yeah.
Then I fit in. There was nothing I had to do other than just ask him for his forgiveness and to say, man, God, I need you.
Yeah.
I'm doing this life I'm living. I'm doing a really poor job of doing it, living it.
Yeah. And then the rest is basically history. And so then because I'm not even aware. So once that happened, when did you start, you're like, yeah, I'm going to start speaking or whatever?
We started going to this church. It was called Village Baptist Church. So we had left the church that her dad went to just because we wanted to find our own connections.
Your own thing. Yeah.
And we had heard this church had young people in it, and it was alive and it was Baptist. So we went from a Grace Brethren church where no one says anything. We go to this Baptist church. Yeah, go ahead.
It's just very quiet.
Yeah, it's just quiet. The preacher preaches, and it's quiet. It's all good. Nothing wrong with it. But then we go to this Village Baptist church, and people are like, "Hey now, come on!" And I'm like, "Okay." And I was, I used to drink. I was crazy.
You're like, I can get into that.
I'm like, okay. These people, like, they alive now.
Kind of wild.
And so we started going there, and I just jumped in and started being like the youth leader. They asked me to be the youth leader. And I'll never forget, too, I owned a gym at the time. April, my wife and I owned a gym in Johnstown called Miller's House Ball. And I had plastered pictures on the wall of tons of fitness people, and this is in the 80s. And
Yeah.
a lot of them are like half naked.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like
right.
thongs on and working out. And it was the 80s vibe, right? Scrunchy socks. And
Absolutely.
I remember the pastor and the associate came to the gym just to talk to me one day.
Yeah.
And they came in and I kind of looked around and I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
And so they were in there a while. And then finally, we got done and they're like, hey, Larry, you might want to, they weren't me.
Yeah.
They're like, you might want to consider maybe changing some of your pictures.
A little scenery,
there.
different scenery.
A little bit. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, but that was funny. And so then I went from that to youth leader. And then I'll never forget the first time they asked me and said, hey, would you like to speak? And I'm like, hey, we'll give you like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Lord.
Okay, I'll do it. And I got up there and I think I just had one verse. And I was literally done in like 5 or 8 minutes. I'm like, it was a lot of, well, anyway, a lot of the same stuff. Yeah. And then, of course, when you get done, I was like, dude, that was really good. I'm like, that was horrible.
Yeah.
Thanks for the props. But
so
it's interesting for someone to look at someone's life. I mean, it's kind of like a bodybuilder, someone who's a pro athlete. When you look at a Kobe, a Michael Jordan, an Arnold Schwarzenegger, you don't see them when they're 10.
Right.
And go, I know for a fact that guy's going to be world class. They're like, he's pretty good.
Yeah,
like,
but you don't know.
But you don't know.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is when it comes to God, and to look at somebody with the potential that they might have, and never, ever, ever give up on what God can do for your life, for my life. I mean, it really, son, it really goes back to that story I told about the story about Debbie. And it took me all that time to where I was a pastor at More Life Church. A lady gives me a call on the phone. Remember, she was drunk. Totally drunk. And I tried to put my pastor hat on, and she was calling me, slurring her words, saying, life's not worth living. And I'm thinking to myself, if I'm honest, I'm like, lady, it probably isn't for you.
I don't know what to tell you.
You're an alcoholic.
Because
I kind of had PTSD because of my stepfather.
Yeah. So naturally,
the abuse
naturally came, and you go, well, this is what it's going to be.
Her cadence, her drunk. I was like, I'm on the phone thinking, lady, just
it is.
Your life sucks.
You're not going to get.
And it's never going to change.
You're
never going to change.
Yeah.
And I'm on the phone with her, literally a long time, 35, 45 minutes. Finally hang up, and I hang up, and I'm in a room by myself, and I literally go, I just wasted 40 minutes of my stinking life.
Yeah.
And I hang up. Fast forward X amount, 3-4 years later.
Yeah.
And I'm at a speaking engagement. I'm speaking at this place called the Look Up Center. And this lady comes up. We're done, and the event's over, and she walks up, and she goes, hi, Larry Miller? And I'm like, yes. She goes, you probably don't know me or even remember me, but my name is Debbie. And I called you on the phone 3-4 years ago. I was an alcoholic. I wanted to kill myself. And because you took the time to be kind and encourage me, I've been alcohol free for 4 years. I'm going to write a book. And I just wanted to say thank you. The true story
is so dumb.
She walked away, and I was like, God,
forgive me.
I am so sorry.
Don't never let me do that.
Never think I am that. So sorry that. Remember, Walt Whitman said, "Be curious, not judgmental." And when we can do that first about another human being, and here's why: don't be judgmental. Be curious, because maybe, like my stepdad, he was in pain. Maybe that lady, she was in pain. And the biggest thing is never give up on what God can do in another person's life. And at that moment, I said, God, I'm sorry. I'll never, ever, ever underestimate the power of what you can do, not what I can do.
Yeah, that's really
cool. Here we are today.
That is such a
because of the power of God's transformation that he can have in our lives.
And what's interesting is when you go back to all of that stuff, you realize all of this was, God opening doors, but it's still you who has to make these decisions. Yes. So he gives you a door that you can open, and you go, should I do this? And that's up to you. You know what I mean? That's up to you. If you could be like
Yeah.
Neil Ball's mom and go, I'm going to sit down next to this person and pray for him and, whatever. And you think,
She had a choice to make.
I think God's calling me to do this, but boy, that's really awkward, and you're going,
what if she
but I'll
wouldn't
tell
have
you
done
what,
that?
but if you would have done, you just don't know. Obviously there's still a calling on you, but how many times has somebody, you go, I should have texted that person, or
Yes.
maybe I should have called that person. Or I was, at the grocery store, and the person that passed me, I thought, I should have said something, and it's like, oh man, there's so many doors that can be opened that God's calling you to do that you may not even realize. And it's just so important. The decisions that you make are everything.
Oh my gosh.
That God's giving you. Because now look where you are. A lot of people don't know that He
son,
does everything.
Daughter.
You do funerals.
Weddings.
Jail. And
I go to the jail ministry.
On Saturday, homeless
Who would have thought when Mrs. Ball said that?
He does it all. The man does
what?
it all. So it's just amazing. And that's your testimony. And that's, your testimony is
God's power of transformation. And listen, everyone has a story. Everybody has a story. People have stories. Mine doesn't have to be the sad story. Everyone has a story, and, I guess at the end of the day is allow God to open up that door, that book, that page, that chapter in your life, so that He can rewrite your story, no matter where you're at in your life right now.
Yeah.
Because He can rewrite it.
Because He can rewrite it. Yeah. And then I wanted to end with 2 questions for you. How has being saved changed your life? Like, what's like the number one thing that you would say?
Yeah, this is easy, actually.
What do you think? What would you say?
It's really
what would you
easy.
Tell people?
For me, knowing Christ and having Christ as the center of my life, when I look back at that 20-year-old kid, he had no hope. He had no peace. Because, and here's why, I was doing it all myself.
Yeah.
See, whatever outcome
you were trying to fill in everything else with your happiness.
It had to be, it had to be what I did. If I got the job, if I got the raise, if I got the girl, if I, everything revolved around me managing it, and I had no peace. So the biggest thing of really knowing Christ, and even more importantly, He called me, He knows me, He knows you, is that I now have peace.
Yeah.
It isn't always easy.
And it's His peace. The joy comes from the Lord.
Joy
else.
comes
unless you understand that, you'll never.
Yeah, you just until you
don't understand.
You just don't understand it.
And then lastly, what's the number one thing you've learned being saved that you would want to tell somebody? I guess that's kind of in the same vein as what that is. You know what? Let's skip that.
But that's okay, because it's still a good question.
Okay.
So someone who is saved, maybe somebody that does know God, and you're listening, and you're like, wow, I'm not there. That's okay. I wasn't either. You know how many baby steps? Listen, I had to have pastors tell me to take down half-naked pictures.
Right.
I don't know what I'm doing.
That's awkward.
This whole thing's a journey.
Yeah.
I have messed up and messed up and messed up. And so what I would say to somebody maybe who knows Christ and is trying to walk this thing out, man, it's a journey. It's a journey. And regardless, just keep going to God. He loves you. He's not mad at you. It's when you don't go back to Him and connect with Him. That's the part.
Yeah.
Just keep going back.
Yeah.
Even when you're ticked.
Yeah. Still talk to Him. Okay. That was good. And then lastly, I had to get this in here for all the married people or the dating people.
Dating and married people.
Speaking of April that you met at the ice cream shop 340 years ago.
Lovely wife.
How long have you been married?
46 years this June.
So it's been 46 years in a Christian marriage. What is the number one thing that you could give advice to that is keeping that marriage strong? Besides you say, just put Jesus first.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
What is something that you guys do or you try to do continually and you go, this works,
right.
This works for you.
In a story kind of, and I'll kind of, sum it up much better in better words, but Jesus was asked, what commandment is the greatest commandment? And they were trying to catch Him in like, well, if He says this, we're going to say this. Yeah. And of course, Jesus being Jesus answered and said, well, there's actually 2. And it's love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might, with all your being, everything within you. Love your neighbor as yourself. By doing this, truly doing this, not just loving God, loving God, you won't murder,
right?
You won't steal, you won't lie, you won't do these things, right? Well, when it comes to marriage, truly love the Lord your God with all your heart. And for us, I believe it's this. when couples lose respect for each other, when you lose respect, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And it's like this: when you don't take care of things that you have, when you lose respect for an item, you just don't care.
Yeah.
Think about our phones, how we care about our phones. Oh my gosh,
That's the lifeline.
where's my
That's
phone?
right, you're right.
We care for it. We plug it in, we charge it, we clean it, we love it, we look at it. And at the end of the day, when you lose respect for each other as a person, that's when the marriage will go south.
Okay. So that's
love God,
yeah,
and respect the other person.
Respect.
You might not agree with them.
Yeah.
You might argue with them. You might be really angry at them. April and I, my wife, we used to say something. We don't do it now because we're just so spiritual. But we used to say this.
Yeah.
We would say, I love you, but I don't like you right now. Because there's a big difference.
I remember.
Do you remember? Like,
yeah.
I love you.
I love you,
but I don't like you right now.
Yeah.
And we would say that, and that was just kind of a way of saying, hey,
I'm
frustrated.
Yeah,
I'm mad, but I love you.
The love is still
but
there.
the respect is there.
Right? Yeah, that's good.
But it's okay to be honest. And that's the thing. Respect. I mean, that's huge. It really is. In a marriage or any relationship.
Yeah. That's good. That's really good. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that and Larry's testimony, or Mack's testimony, if you will, Mack Senior.
Yes.
And we will we hope to see you guys again when we do episode 20.
All right.
Have a good day.